Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Dungeons and Dopamine. Ta-da! Hi, welcome to Dungeons and Dopamine. I'm Jess.
And I'm Bree.
And this is episode 35.
Yay!
And that's really all you need to know.
That means we've got this.
Absolutely. I like that you're saying it. I had to pep talk myself before I hit record because it's been a while.
It has. We keep doing that. This time of year has been awful.
And it's so weird because there's nothing to do.
Right.
Like,
we
we're
should
not
be less busy.
Yeah.
We're just always dying or doing
Stuck
stupid
under the
stuff.
snow.
Yes. Or refusing to leave the house because it's too cold and I won't do it.
It is amazing that you made it here today, seeing as getting out of your driveway and getting into mine is a very difficult task.
It was kind of like off-road extravaganza on the way here.
I have an old sedan. Like, nothing special about it. So it's always like, well, we'll see.
We did, because of the length of our driveway, make sure that any car I own has all-wheel drive. So my car does okay, but it's still, I mean, even the Jeep was having trouble in this stuff. It's awful.
There's nothing you can do on, like, ice or slush that turns into
slushy ice.
Yeah.
So
stupid Michigan.
Looking for warm places to live.
And Zed, we're coming for you. I gotta practice saying Zed instead of Z so that they'll accept us as one of their own.
I appreciate that tip. I will also work on that.
You from now on refer to stripy horses as zebra.
Zebras.
Not all stripy horses, just literally zebras.
Nope. I'm going with what you said the first time. All stripy horses.
That is a beautiful mare. She's a beautiful zebra. Ma'am, that's just my hauling horse.
Nope. Jessica told me it's a zebra.
That's a fine zebra.
And this is your fact of the day from Dungeons and Dopamine.
Logging off. Bum, bum. That's me pushing the off button. Bum, bum.
Did you see the TikTok that's been going around? It's like older millennials and their Gen Z children. And it's like, how would you mimic picking up a phone? And, you know, we do it with the with the thumb and the pinky.
Yeah.
And kids these days pick it up. It's like a flat hand.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? And they're like, okay, how do you mimic hanging up? And we put the phone down. And they push a button.
I will say, there is nothing satisfying about hitting that end button. It's not even a button anymore. It's a spot on your screen.
Doesn't make a noise.
No.
And then you have to deal with the anger of not throwing your phone because it'll break. And they don't hold up nearly as well as the old phones used to. You can still do that if you work in an office.
I think we should normalize carrying around old phones so that when we end an angry conversation on our cell phones, we can slam our phones down.
I don't feel like I'd have to carry it many places because you know I'm not having any actual phone conversations in public.
I mean, even bigger perk. You barely have to take it anywhere.
See? We're
it's like a fidget
changing
toy.
Worlds here.
I mean, yeah. That's what we're here for. So, like, businessy stuff. We just wanted to remind everyone after the holidays, Patreon is still up.
Jessica still finds cool bloopers to add. She's been sharing some of them on the Facebook page, such as, you know, the 5-10 minutes we spent laughing about the panda scene. But there's some really great stuff there. Plus book lists, and that just keeps getting longer and longer.
Bonus content of stuff that we discuss but doesn't get to make it in.
Because every hour episode has about 30 to 40 minutes of editing us out because we talk way too much.
And literally interrupt ourselves in the middle of words.
ADHD.
So, just encourage you, if you're interested, to take a look. No pressure. We don't expect anything from anybody, but do that if you want.
And we're going to be diving into merchandise here shortly.
Woohoo!
So there will be merchandise options.
And then share us, please.
Yes.
During
now
the
is
fall,
a great time of year.
Yes. During the fall, like, all listens go down for every podcast everywhere. But that's, I think, because people are busy and, like,
holidays are coming up.
Yeah, and they're not, like, maybe working where they might be listening or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so now it's picking back up, and we would love for you guys to share us. If you shared it with somebody right now, where do you think they should start listening from?
Definitely not the beginning. How about, like, episode 6, where it's just all kinds of technical issues?
The demons come to take our podcast away. Yeah.
Gosh.
I was having this thought to myself today, and I know we've had a little bit of discussion about it already. But
I feel like Denver Airport-ish is where things started getting really good. Like, we had the technology figured out. I think we were up here by that point, or close to.
So, yeah.
And
it wasn't dog barks and ticky-tackies from their clicky-clacky nails and...
ticky-tackies from their clicky-clackies.
Exactly. Now I gotta post that with a picture of my dog. So I was gonna say I would suggest people, and like I said, I've been thinking about this, so I have a 1-up for this answer. So I would start from like here, like right now, the most recent episode, which today 34 went out.
Yep.
So I would have listened from 34 backwards, which shouldn't be too much of an issue. We don't have a lot of continuous
current event
story.
Yeah.
I think the most confusing thing would just be the constant references to the Dogman of Michigan for some reason.
Because he was pretty early on.
He was pretty early. Bigfoot time period. But I feel like if you started there and you loved us, if you fell in love with us there, you would look past the bad parts.
True.
And maybe when we
the growing
talked
pains
a little too long, or
when Bree talks about real estate for 45 minutes.
When maybe we didn't edit very much during the first few episodes. Even though I will say my topic for the very first episode, the Titanic, was one of my favorites.
Yes, still one of the top topics.
I almost feel like there has to be a way to re-research and re-record it. Or maybe even just record it with my old notes.
Yeah, it could be fun.
Just
what did I mean? What was I even? I try to go back to some of the first episode, my notes, because I'm trying to eventually convert them all into blog posts. So I can share our podcast that way as well. But some of the early ones are bad. My notes were just yeah, I'm just going to wing this part. I'm like, what? What was I doing?
I also feel like I didn't quite... now I sort of have a purpose to my topics. I want to teach you this. And I want to tell you something cool and exciting about it, because otherwise I'm just going to be kind of boring. I don't think I knew that back then. I was just... bleh. Just talking.
You were like, I have to get this done.
And some of them are really long, some of them are really short. I did just find an envelope the other day that was apparently sitting at my desk while we were recording one time, and it just says John White and the People.
Remember John White and the People?
It's a good album. You should hear it. That might be a little confusing if you just started too.
That's true.
But it's okay. I did ask Ryan that question. So I must have been thinking about... Oh, no, it was on his lunch break when he called me. And he said he would start at 2nd edition. Because he feels like that's a solid place where we stopped messing up. Although, we just released one where we forgot how to podcast.
I mean, if I don't do something every day... I don't remember how it goes, okay? I can't even tell you what my favorite books are, except for the ones that I am actually physically reading at the time.
I've never read a book. I just posted something on our Facebook about that.
I saw that today.
So, Dogman of Michigan.
He's great.
He's
He
scary.
is very scary.
Do
Do you know where he likes to hang out?
on islands? Haunted islands.
Ooh.
Ooh. Ooh. Now I gotta cut each of those out and put them on top of each other and have a song.
It'll be beautiful.
I think so.
Perfect harmonies.
It's gonna be terrible.
I support it. The dog man in Michigan also supports it.
Absolutely. He's a bro.
He really is. Really looks out for us and our tiny little podcast.
He really does.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking besties.
Obviously.
I need a shirt with the dog man in Michigan on it, or else this is all for nothing.
We really just need somebody
Merch.
that listens to us to just start knocking out some t-shirt ideas here that I will buy and wear and advertise for whoever
all
makes
the
them
time.
every day. Like our weird thing on the front and your logo on the back or something. I'm
Absolutely.
into it.
Team Dogman. So I had a hard time with topics this week.
You mentioned that.
Like, I know I transitioned really well just now to haunted islands. But let me tell you, I researched 3 individual haunted islands, and every one of them let me down.
Oh no. That doesn't happen to you very often.
I know. And the last time it happened that was cool was the Winchester Mystery House.
Right?
And that wasn't a letdown because that turned out to be about this super cool, amazing lady who freaking killed it.
That was the best plot twist ever.
Ever. She's amazing. So actually I'm going to see, and that's why we drink, and I'm going to suggest that they listen to that episode because they've covered the Winchester Mystery House.
Yes.
And I want to be like, you guys are amazing and I love you and please don't change, but you should listen to this episode because I talk about the Winchester Mystery House and you guys are going to love it.
Kind of our heroes and kind of part of the reason we do this.
Sort of exactly how we planned out our plot, so to speak.
Yes.
But anyways, this island that I chose to tell you guys about is very interesting. Has a lot of history.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to, sort of like when we talked about the Bermuda Triangle, I'm going to bring you all up, and then I'm going to knock you all down.
Typical Jessica fashion.
I know. I'm a jerk. Can't help it. So I don't know if you've ever heard of this. I know you used to like the haunted scene.
Mm-hmm. When I was like 10, before my anxiety got the better of me.
And sort of before the internet. But, like, maybe you knew about this. So there's an island in Italy near Venice called Poveglia. It's in the Venetian Lagoon, which sounds magical.
Right? Can I go there?
I wouldn't suggest it.
Damn it. You're ruining all these places for me.
I wouldn't even go to Venice right now. I'm pretty sure it's sinking actively.
Oh, really?
I mean, I've heard...
Is that one of those current events I should know about that I don't?
Or I'm making it up. I'm not sure. I'm an entertainer.
I just say whatever comes to mind.
Poveglia
That's how
is
we
not
get
even real.
sued by Venice for
Absolutely.
lying about them sinking. Misinformation.
Cease and desist. So, this island is considered one of the most haunted places on Earth and the most haunted island on Earth.
Okay.
So I'm going to tell you its history. So, the funny thing is, funny, ironic, not funny, haha, is that there was a lot of different information around, and so I'm going to tell you some jumbled information here, but you'll see. Okay, here we go.
We can do this.
So the first record of people inhabiting the island was 421, literally just the year 421.
It was like, okay, April 21st. Like, recently?
Do you have year? Has year? Will tell. And they lived on the island until 1379 when there was some war and they had to flee the island. Let me just also preface this by saying Italy fights a lot. Like, they can't stop fighting. It's annoying.
Quit it, Italy.
Cool it, Italy. So there was a lot of war. I'm not going to go into a lot of it, but I had to listen to a lot of it. That's unacceptable, Italy.
I was looking for not war things. I was looking for haunted
I
things.
just wanted some ghosts. So, during the Black Death, during the plague, which ironically was the name of our episode today.
We are definitely better than plagues.
We are absolutely better than plagues, which also means we're better than this island.
I agree. Name for next week? Better than this island.
Sounds very mysterious. So they sent the bodies of the deceased to the island and threw them into mass graves. The really sick part of that is that if you were close to dying, they would also haul you and throw you into one of these mass graves with these bodies. There is a rumor that they sent, obviously, these people to die there, and that they also burn them to death, or burn them alive.
Oh.
It is said that there were 160,000 deaths on this island.
Holy cow.
They deposited them into mass graves, and it's said that more than half of the soil is made from cremated remains, and that things that grow on the island aren't safe. Like, you can't grow crops and eat them.
Well, yeah. They don't really like that rotting flesh bacteria in your veggies.
What?
Gosh, that's
How
and the water supply. Like, it gets into the
Yeah.
gross. Sorry.
Nope. All good. So, in 1922, the Venetian authorities built a mental asylum, a mental hospital on the island.
Yeah, because that seems
We sent
like a
our
good
plagueies
idea.
there. Let's also send those who have mental illness there. It seems like a perfect combination.
This will end well for everyone.
For everyone. And you know they loved the mentally ill in the 20s.
Oh, yes. They
treated
took
them
such good care of
great.
them.
So a lot of patients, did report seeing things on the island.
I mean,
Ghosts and hearing things and things like that. One of their doctors became absurdly interested in them saying what they were seeing. He got obsessed. He began doing really deranged experiments on his patients, like lobotomies while they were awake.
ooh.
And he would play with their brains, is literally one of the phrases I read.
Bleh.
He was absolutely fascinated with their claims. However, of course, he caused a lot of deaths. He was eventually driven to his own death by suicide by climbing up onto the bell tower that was on this hospital and jumping off. There were reports that said that he was pushed, but that was all literally in dramatic stories of the island, not any of the articles about the island. So I doubt that one. I would suspect he jumped. So a family bought the island after the asylum was closed and tried to live there. And
love
they couldn't.
people. I love the optimism of people.
Right?
Oh,
No.
mass graves, mental asylum, doctor that committed deranged surgeries and experiments and then killed himself.
Tainted soil.
That sounds like a great place to live.
We
I
won't
can't
get
wait
bothered.
to raise my family here.
Oh. So, of course, as you may predict, they did not stay very long. They left due to hauntings and otherworldly experiences.
Weird.
I know. So let me tell you a few stories I read. The first one I read, I had a really hard time buying any of it, but they had photos. Now, they could be telling me this is a photo of something. I mean, you could take a photo of the Eiffel Tower at Disney World and tell me it's the Eiffel Tower, and I probably wouldn't know
Right.
if you were lying or not. So I'm taking this with a grain of salt, but it is a really good story. So this island is illegal to travel to. It is now owned by like a billionaire who was going to build a luxury resort, but
Again, great idea.
beautiful, but he hasn't. But you are not allowed to go there. The Italian government wants nothing to do with it, but they will arrest you, of course, because it's private property. So there are a lot of boats that will tour around it as like a hee, look at this. But these young 18 to 20 year olds bribed a water taxi to take them out. They got there at dark because apparently they won't patrol at dark, the police.
Oh, nothing weird there.
Not at all. They got off the boat, and the boat driver, even not understanding the island, he was from a different country, so he didn't understand the stories of the place, but he wouldn't get off the boat. He refused to step on foot onto the island when he got there. So that's creepy. They started exploring and taking pictures. You get kind of the usual creepy stuff, like their cell phones died when they got there. They felt like there was someone watching them that they didn't want, didn't want them there. But the really creepy thing is, all of a sudden, they heard an ear-piercing scream. And it was like that scream set off the screams all around
Oh my gosh.
them.
Nope. Nope. Get back on the water taxi.
They did thankfully run for the water taxi. And they got on it, and as they were getting on the boat and taking off, because the guy driving the taxi was like, "Nah, we're out."
Because he already knew.
Exactly. They heard the bell in the bell tower ringing. The really terrifying part about that is that there is no more bell in the bell tower. It's gone. So after this, when they got back, apparently one of them decided he was going to write out his story online. Some of them also said they've experienced nightmares. They've had sensations of being followed, and they've had some like noises and creepy things happening in their house, things moving and stuff. So that's great.
That's just fine. It's just fine.
Nothing there. There were construction crews that were hired to work on the island, and they've quit abruptly and with no warning, assuming that they've stirred up the spirits by trying to change things.
Right.
Locals will not visit the island.
Smart.
Those who have visited report more of the bell ringing. That's a very common thing. Touches and scratches when there's no one near them. Seeing people for a moment or off in the distance, and then when you blink, they're gone, which I love.
It's
my
favorite thing to happen.
Feeling cold in hot spaces, hearing noises such as moans and screams, and even so far as people shouting at them to leave, stay away, get out.
Duh.
Take their advice. Leave, get away, stay out.
Get out.
Have you ever heard of the show Ghost Adventures?
Yes.
So a guy named Zach Baggins is the host of Ghost Adventures.
Is he related to Bilbo?
I hope so. And that's why we drink girls are obsessed. Apparently he blocked one of them because she challenged him on Twitter once. He's
dreams right there.
He's kind of special. Sorry, that's just what I've heard. Zach Baggins, don't sue me.
It's not our fault.
Not our fault. Hashtag not my fault. If you say it with a hashtag, it makes it legit, right?
Exactly.
So, this is on the Travel Channel. So, Ghost Adventures traveled there with Zach Baggins. He had a lot of experiences on the island. One of the experiences, he seemingly becomes possessed and starts screaming at his co-host, who is also his apparently really good friend, but also they apparently treat him really bad. I don't really get it.
I don't think I'll watch that show.
I know, I thought about watching this episode, and then I'm like, I don't want to.
No, thanks.
But I did want to read to you what Zach said about this particular experience. Apparently, this guy's co-host's name is Aaron, which is minorly important. Okay. This is kind of an excerpt from like a book or something that he wrote. So it says, more on possession in a minute. First, let's finish the story of Poveglia. I don't remember everything that happened to me that night. I know we were in the main hospital of Poveglia trying to lure the spirits out. Nick was chanting over and over in Italian. He writes what it is, but we know that I can't speak any other language, and
so
thus
we won't try.
I'm not going to try. Yeah. And what he was chanting means use my energy. Next thing I know, I felt different, and not just a little different. I felt like someone else was looking through my eyes. Nothing looked familiar to me. I froze. My body wouldn't move. I looked at Aaron and suddenly felt a rage build up in me to do him harm. I saw myself tearing him apart. I wanted to peel his skin off and gouge out his eyes. get out of here.
Yeah.
Move on. Get out of here, I yelled, lashing out for no apparent reason. I squeezed the camera in my hands until it snapped. For a second, I thought I might be having a stroke or some sort of super bad reaction to shellfish. But there was
That's where my brain would go.
Shellfish
I just
always
showed up
makes
on
me
a
wanna
haunted
puke.
island to lure some spirits out, and the guy next to me is chanting, "Use my energy. I'm sure this will end well."
I mean, obviously shellfish. An anchor took me over and the fight was on. I fought to get whatever it was in me out. It was a struggle between good and evil that I eventually won, but not before going through a traumatic battle. He says I had to keep reminding myself who I was over and over. I wasn't weak enough to be taken over. After I shouted at Aaron, he wisely left me alone. Nick also moved away from me. I think that's their camera guy.
He was the one chanting.
Nick was?
I think so.
Or Aaron? I don't know.
I don't know.
I guess we have to watch it.
Let me just bring that up.
Nick also moved away from me and went behind a wall until it was over. What was really dangerous was that I had a machete on my hip at the time. We had been using it to get through some of the thick, overgrown weeds on the island. He says that he had a hard time watching the footage after he got home. He did a cleansing afterward, and it felt like hot grease burning the evil energy away. So that's great.
Field trip.
Please don't live on the island or go to the island.
I mean, so the logical part of me wants to be like, okay, well, he's on a TV show. Like,
Right, of course.
he's doing that for dramatic effect. But the non-logical part of me is like, who goes somewhere like that and chants, use my energy to evil spirits?
and
No.
then thinks they're having a reaction to shellfish.
That is like rule number 1 of dealing with spiritual energy is not to invite them into use your energy. That's an even higher rule than not following the lights, okay?
You know,
and we
will
all
give you
know
that.
I would
Yeah.
follow the lights. I would definitely not invite the spirits to use my energy.
The lights do not get an invitation. You'll just follow them to their house.
Right.
Not into yours.
Exactly. They don't. I don't invite strange things into my house
Nope.
or my body
Nope.
or my energy.
No. Ugh.
Do you remember visiting the asylum here?
I do remember. I finally admitted to my mom several years ago that I had gone there because she would have been furious.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel brave enough to do that until I was like 30.
My mom always knew and thought it was awesome, but that's fair. I'm glad none of that happened to us.
Amen. Yeah.
But I still feel like even back then, we were smart enough not to anger
right.
whatever might be around.
We were all like, we're tough. And
Yeah.
then
I'm not scared of scary basements that are dark and may or may not have homeless people living in them.
So now that I've done all the fun stuff, real quick, I just want to throw a wet blanket all up over the top of this.
I'm ready.
So starting off, I watched this guy on YouTube and really disliked him. And it wasn't his fault. He's probably a great dude. Ryan watches him and he really likes him. But he told me all these truths about this that I didn't want to hear.
Truth teller.
So, exactly. So he's a bad dude. But he had a lot of good points that I'm going to tell you, and then we can just pretend they never happened. First of all, the total number of people who died near that area of plague was completely totaled, like 200,000. So the fact that 160,000 of them would have been specifically on that island
Seems a little extreme.
yeah. Island was settled in the 800s, and there are two different stories. This is the only thing that isn't really recorded well. It was either settled by some war prisoners.
I'm sorry, I just love how disappointed you are in all this. Like, the real history is that it was settled by some guys, I guess. Like every normal place.
I really just wanted it to be plague victims. Anyway, so basically it was bad people, like war victims or people who started an uprising and then gave up. Either one of those. And so they were sent to the island and given like you can leave the island once a month to sell fish, and you can build a settlement here. Super lame. In 1334, there is a documented fire that overtook several homes in the village. During these periods of time, the Italian government would pay close attention to the island. They would start creating different rules and stuff. In the 1400s, it became a really important area as an entrance into Venice.
Oh.
And it became like a shipyard almost, where they would build or fix ships that came in. It was also a quarantine spot. So if you felt ill or one of your crewmates was ill, you had to stop there to make sure you weren't going to bring anything into Venice.
I mean, I feel like that's something we would do nowadays.
I agree. And 4 people died of the plague on the island. Documented.
4?
4.
Huh. Do you think they were especially angry?
They were screamers. There's no record that speaks about the Black Death. I say all these weird little mini facts because these are all really well recorded. At one point, war emptied the island off, and the monks wanted to go back to their temple. There's actually records of how much these monks made.
So really good records.
And none of the fun history was there.
The monks don't talk about the hauntings.
Exactly. Maybe they can talk.
That's true.
One really cool thing, because otherwise this is stupid, there was a giraffe being gifted to someone, and it had to quarantine on the island for 40 days to make sure that it was healthy and wasn't going to bring anything on.
Aww.
So a giraffe lived on the island for 40 days.
That is good news.
I like
Thanks
that a
for
lot.
really bringing that up at the end there.
I gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of it. There was never an asylum built. They built a hospital, but it was a really bad place for a hospital, so they removed it.
What about the doctor that did all the experiments? Any record of him?
No.
It's just based off an awful movie.
Yeah. So anyway, I had a really hard time with topics because this kept happening.
Because the most haunted island in the world is
Not
haunted.
There's
Except by 4 plague dyers.
Exactly. I even went on Reddit to try and find scary stories of people, and I found a lot of Italians saying that they go there and smoke and drink as teens. Like, that's a thing that they do. And there's a lot of bunnies, and they feed the bunnies. Come on!
I like how the haunted island ends with teenagers getting high and smoking, or getting high and feeding bunnies.
Maybe they're Venetian screeching bunnies.
And that was probably just mountain lions, right? Like,
or the whole thing, like I said, was
birds.
completely made up, and then people have just been rolling with it.
They just really like the island. They're just trying to keep people off it.
Right?
Probably like a flock of flamingos there.
This is like the Denver airport.
Yes.
They're just
It's
making
probably
up
the
stories
same
and
people
leaning in
as the Denver airport.
Yeah.
This conspiracy goes even deeper than we originally thought.
That makes me feel better. It's such a bummer to, like, you start and you're like, I'm gonna scare myself.
Mm-hmm.
The first video I watched was this guy who was like, nah,
that can't be.
none of that happened. There's no records. There's records of the monks' payments or the priest's payments, but not of a doctor who played with brains. And frankly, that's just not right.
It's not. Very disappointed. Come on, Venice.
Do
Get
better.
it together.
Do your hauntings better. Do your records worse.
Have some more fires that can't be explained.
So anyway.
Speaking of conspiracy theories,
Ooh.
I'm going to talk about elections. And how...
There are so many.
Yeah, and how they're all stupid.
I'm not going to say anything that's going through my head right now about all of the conspiracies I've heard, because I know we want some attention, but I don't want that kind of attention.
Oh, gosh. And I'll ruin it all with this topic anyway. So let's preface with, I am a general law township clerk in Michigan. So the laws that I'm going to speak about and the election setup that I'm going to speak about is Michigan specific, and in some instances specific to townships with, approximately less than 6,000 voters, which is going to be a little bit different than the bigger communities that have, 10, 20, 30,000 voters.
Or the presidential election.
Yes. But I'm talking about elections because unless you've been living under a rock, you know that this is a big election year. It is a presidential election year, and it is the first presidential election year since November 2020, when everything basically went to shit. So I am going to educate you on elections and why, at least in Michigan, they were not stolen and they were not faked. And conspiracy theorists that believe that are ridiculous. At least in Michigan. I don't know what happens in other states. I fully admit that. And I guess, I don't know who really controls the strings at the top of the world if we get into like lizard people and puppet strings.
I mean, Denver, Colorado Airport.
Right. But I can tell you that at least in Michigan, our elections are pretty much on the up and up. I do believe it's important to vote. I probably would not have said that prior to working as a township clerk, but I believe it's important to vote if you are educated on what you're voting about. Pay attention to what's important to you so you know when you need to vote. It's not always just the presidential elections. You should be paying attention to your local elections, your school board elections. Probably, honestly, at this point in my life, I would tell you it's more important to pay attention to your local elections than it is to pay attention to these presidential elections.
Well, those are so much easier to learn quickly.
Yes, and they deal more with what's going on in your day-to-day life. So your local elections are going to determine what you're paying for in your property taxes, what millages you're paying for, whether the schools are getting money, whether your fire departments are getting money. So while our upcoming presidential election is very important, pay attention more to your local elections. Our local elections are very, very poorly attended. It's usually a turnout rate of less than like 13% of registered voters. And the people that are showing up, that tiny percentage, they're the ones that are feeling pretty extreme one way or another about these issues. And that's not always who you want choosing your options. I'm also going to I'm going to educate you about elections, mostly because of all the misinformation that went out in 2020. And also because in 2022, Proposal 2022-2 was the Promote the Vote proposal that a bunch of people voted yes to and passed, which gives people new options for voting in Michigan this year that you might not be aware of. So even though there were a lot of that proposal that I don't agree with as a clerk, I do think it's important that we get the option to vote out to more people. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. The first thing you should be aware of, and you're probably not, is that your local clerk runs your elections. Whether they are your township clerk or your city clerk, they are the person in charge of the elections. They are the person that is on the hook if anything goes wrong. They may have a team or an election administrator that kind of handles all the day-to-day stuff, but the clerk is the one that's really on the hook. It's part of our statutory legal duties to run these elections. If you remember from my township government segment, you should also know that your township clerk may not have had any training on any of this and is going off some rules and guidelines that were written by our legislature and then interpreted by lawyers and then passed on down to regular people like me to plan some of the biggest events of the year, with the guidelines being these legalese confusing guidelines. So
I love that.
Yes. Isn't that great? Mm-hmm. I will tell you that I do believe all of the clerks I met are some of the most dedicated, smartest, unbiased people I have met. But you should know that to be a clerk, you typically have to choose a political party to run. But most clerks do identify as either Democrat or Republican, and there is a purpose to that, or there is a purpose to knowing that. And that is because when we put our teams together to run elections, so our election inspectors, we actually do have to balance our teams with Republican and Democrat balance. So if you go down to your township and apply to be an election inspector, the form will ask you what party you identify with, and that is because we want balanced checks and balances for all of our election procedures.
That's good to know.
It is, and it's important when you think about all of the misinformation that was spread in 2020. These checks and balances that I'm going to tell you about really prove how impossible or how difficult it would be to do what we were all being accused of. Like I said, when I set up my team of election inspectors, I have to have at least 3 per precinct, which is where everybody goes to vote. And I usually have up to 6. They have to be balanced Democrat, Republican. It's our biggest set of checks and balances because you've got 3 to 7 people in a room who are of differing political parties who are all watching each other. They all have to sign off on the documentation. They all have to check the seals and the serial numbers and everything. It can't just be one person in charge. But this really starts way back when the ballots are even being made. So a ballot
I never even thought about the fact that the ballots need to be created.
Isn't that crazy?
How dumb.
So it's usually done by your county clerk's office, and there's a whole bunch of legal procedures to even get questions and names on the ballot. Oh, again, a whole different episode. And then those ballots are printed by a printing company, but the programming to read these ballots is created by the company that makes the tabulator machines that you run the ballots through. In Michigan, we have tabulator machines they're just big scanners. So you put the ballot in, it takes a picture of your ballot, registers what you checked or colored in, and then saves that information on a tiny little flash drive.
Oh, okay.
So these flash drives and these machines, that's all they do. On this flash drive is a program that uploads into the machine to tell it how to work, and then it takes pictures of the ballots and counts the numbers. There's nothing to hack, because it's all programmed by the programming company. If I plugged it into my computer, it's just a bunch of files that I guess maybe if I was a hacker, I could change. I'm telling you, no clerks know how to do that. And it gets literally locked and sealed into the machine with a sealed ribbon. It's not a ribbon. I'm making ribbon pantomimes.
One of those like sticky?
No, it's like a pull-through plastic tab that gets locked, like almost something you would see at a store, like a security tag.
Oh, okay.
And it has a serial number which has to be documented like 3 times and then checked by a Republican and a Democrat inspector to make sure nobody is fussed with my machine. At the end of the day, or the end of the voting, that little flash drive is put into a sealed canvas bag, which again gets another seal on it with a serial number that is then documented by a Democrat and a Republican and checked over by another person. And that flash drive is what contains, again, the pictures of the ballots and has counted everything. It prints off like a results tape to say what the machine has counted, and that's like the initial results is this tape. And everybody has this idea that that's it, that's the results. But this flash drive is then given to the county clerk's office, who then gives it to what's called the Board of Canvassers. And the Board of Canvassers is another group of people that is put together by the county and is a team of 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans that all don't know each other and are unrelated to elections. And they go through picture by picture of these ballots and count out these results to make sure that whatever the results tape that printed out actually aligns to what is showing up on this flash drive.
Can I just point out that sounds like a horrible job?
Right.
Freaking awful.
At least they only have to do it 3 to 4 times a year. Going back to the beginning, we know that these machines are reading these ballots correctly because I actually have to test them before I can give anyone a ballot. Using pre-done guidance from the state, I have to create a set of ballots that I then run through the machine with the programming and then confirm that the ballots I ran through match out what prints on the results tape, which matches out to what the results should be based on the ballots I created. And there's a very specific process that's set up by the state that I have to follow. And I can't do this by myself. I have to do this with the election commission in my office, which is typically me and my deputy clerk and either the supervisor or treasurer of my office. And I have to do it a second time at what's called a public accuracy test in front of the public, which is anybody who wants to show up. Did you know you could go to your township office and watch them test ballots?
I mean, now I'm going to be at your township office when you test ballots.
Should.
I'm going to cheer every time you do something.
Yay! So already, I've involved so many different businesses, programming, people, ballots, all these things. I would have to have every step of that situation controlled to be able to fake these ballots. And not only that, not all those different functions, but then I have to somehow convince everybody in my office to contribute to this. And all of my election inspectors who are of varying different parties. And I can't just sign up 6 of my friends and say, oh yeah, these guys are Republicans and these guys are Democrats, because I have to report their names to the head of the election committees in the county. So there's a Democratic Party and a Republican Party in our county, and I have to report the names of my election inspectors to them. And typically they know these people that are involved in the process, so they'll know. Oh.
And if you had the money to be bribing all of these people,
I would not be a clerk.
You wouldn't be there.
Exactly.
You'd be on an island being like, oh, elections? I don't know. Maybe I'll be home in time to do that.
Yeah.
I'm fine. It's fine. Everything is fine.
It's fine. So I think I counted at one point, I would essentially need to involve, just in my tiny little office, 12 to 15 people that I would have to convince that we were going to, screw the election and put in our own votes.
And this is for a township of less than 6,000
right.
people. So you're going to get really far.
Yes, absolutely. and even if I did all of that, even if I somehow convinced all of those people, I'm only messing with up to 6,000 votes. Not even that, because if any township in the state had a 100% voter turnout rate, there would be investigations immediately.
Oh, for sure.
So my 6,000 votes that I messed with is not going to change what the township next to me does. So to get a whole area of people get enough votes illegally changed to make a difference in this election is astounding to me. The idea that they think this is so easy, we could just throw it all together, slap it all together and turn in some fake votes is just astounding to me.
Well, and I'm sorry. Maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'm too innocent. Why would you want to? Who cares? It's less than 6,000. And like you said, it's probably 3,000 votes. And that's lucky if you have half.
Yeah, never. It's maybe 20% on a big election.
Your area, to me, without giving too much out, is, I feel like an area where votes would be higher.
We are one of the higher turnouts in the county, and it's still only about 20 to 30% of our entire district.
Yeah.
Which brings me, no, that's good, because that brings me to my next point. So absentee voting was really the area that people concentrated on with this voter fraud situation. So in 2018, Michigan passed a law saying that you could vote absentee for no reason. So anybody could vote absentee. It used to be you had to be like elderly or sick or on vacation or something.
We're sick of the elderly.
Yes. Can't go in that building. There's too many old people.
Smells like mothballs. I'm sorry. I love older people. I love old people. That sounds like I really mean that.
Right. They're great. Those old people. So absentee voting is probably somewhere where you could get away with voter fraud. But the only time I have experienced voter fraud in my office is either parents voting their college kids' ballots and turning them in, or adults voting their elderly parents' ballots and turning them in. I have never experienced somebody trying to vote for someone else or vote a dead person's ballot.
Person. All the dead people vote.
And I also want to point out that when someone dies, it obviously gets reported to the county because, death certificates and funerals and burials and things like that. And the county clerk then goes into our statewide system to mark each person as deceased. And if somebody is marked deceased, I cannot issue them a ballot. The system does not let me give them a ballot. And anybody who is not issued a ballot cannot show up on my list of people who I have received a ballot from. So then when my precinct inspectors, that again are a mix of Republican and Democrat, are running these absentee ballots, they are checking each ballot against a list of eligible voters and people that we have received ballots from. And if I have 500 people on that list and give my precinct inspectors 600 ballots, it's not going to match up, and somebody's going to report me to somebody important, and I'm going to go to jail because that would be voter fraud. But otherwise, there's no way for me to issue ballots to people who either don't want them or don't vote them or are dead or have moved out of state. People have taken this.
Are you telling me there are checks and balances?
There are more checks and balances. There are all checks and balances. The people that have taken this incredibly complex system and made it seem like it was as simple as getting a few extra ballots, coloring them in, and then throwing them in a box and somebody's going to count them are basically my worst enemy at this point. The amount of anger that your clerks are experiencing over lies that have been told, lies that have been found to be fraudulent. The court cases and everything have proven that these are lies. The people that are getting the brunt of this anger are your township clerks. It's your township employees. It's your election inspectors. It's the people that you don't want to be making angry because they are in charge of our elections.
Well, and you really don't have that much to gain for what you would lose.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm going to get a couple extra votes for the person I like, but potentially ruin my entire... it's a felony to interfere with an election.
You might never see your kid again.
But that's totally worth getting those 3,000 extra votes that won't make a difference in this election. So that's my rant. And I did cut it short because I could talk about these checks and balances and the actual procedures for so long. But if you are interested and you want to know more and you want to see this process, go apply to be an election inspector.
Go cheer for Bree while she
come
turns
cheer
in the
for
results.
You don't even have to work for me. I will just let you. Legally, I have to just let you hang out and watch all day if you want.
Well, that's the other thing. Didn't you say during your Better Than Local Government episode that I could now request these results?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You could FOIA request these. There are people called poll watchers and poll challengers now that can show up during an election and just watch all day long. A poll challenger, if they have the right training and if they're registered, they can actually challenge people when they're voting. If you were a poll challenger and saw a guy that used to be your neighbor but you knew moved to Texas a year ago show up and try to vote, you could challenge them and they'd have to prove that they still live where they are. As I mentioned in Better Than Local Government, we're open to the public all the time. Everything we do is subject to public scrutiny. You can show up and watch me do my job every day. Please don't. Aww. Unless you're awesome and are friendly to me, please don't show up and watch me do my job just to try to catch me doing something wrong.
From now on. I don't want to see you do anything wrong. I just want to pressure you.
You could. So, elections can't be stolen. Okay, Michigan elections can't be stolen. If they are being stolen, it comes from way higher than any of your local clerks. Please be nice to your local clerks. Get out and vote. There are so many ways for you to vote now with the passing of Proposal 22-2-2. I already talked about absentee voting, which is basically you request a ballot, you get it in the mail, you send it back.
You can be antisocial.
You can then research everything that's on the ballot while you're at home. You don't have to try to remember these things when you stand in line and go in to vote in person. It gets put into the machine the same way any other ballot does. You can obviously always vote in person on the day of at whatever precinct that you are located in. If you are an overseas voter, so whether that means you're in the military or you live overseas but still maintain a residence in Michigan or in the United States, you can vote via move ballot, which gives you, it's a little bit different than an absentee ballot. If you're a military voter, you now have, I think, up to 6 days after the election to return your ballot, as long as it's postmarked by the day of the election, which is a new law. And then the biggest new part of Proposal 2022-2 is early voting in Michigan. So starting this year for any state and federal elections, if you don't want to vote absentee and you cannot vote the day of, don't want to vote the day of the election, we have to have voting available 9 days prior, at least 9 days prior to every state and federal election. Most of Muskegon County, that will take place together in one location. You'll get a postcard about it telling you where your early voting locations are. There are a few townships that are not participating in that, and they will handle their own early voting sites. And there are also accessible voting ways if you are, if you're handicapped or can't get out of the house. There are accessible ballots online. There also, every precinct is required to meet any ADA accessibility requirements. So there should be a place you can sit to vote. There should be a place with the accessible voting. The precinct inspectors should be trained to help you if you do need assistance. So there's no more excuses. If you're interested in voting and there are things important to you on the ballot, get out and vote. You have so many options, and now you can feel safe in knowing that your vote counts. It's just going to be counted by the county clerk's board of canvassers and verified by the state.
So I knew not to question, because I severely questioned silently your local government day and ended up really enjoying it. I think that the process you have to go through for votes sounds like a freaking nightmare.
There is a reason I am not running for clerk again. And this is not all the reasons, but it is a major one. These elections are heinous, and they get worse every year between the information coming down from the state that we have to now put into action and just the anger of people.
But it isn't kind of a peace to know that there's so much crap you have to go through. I'm sorry you have to go through it. It'll be great when it's not you.
Yes.
And someone else has to go through it.
And honestly, I probably will stay on to be an election inspector.
Will you go watch them put in the...
I am. I'm just going to stand over the clerk's shoulder and be like, that's not how it goes. So if you want to get involved in elections, besides just voting, which again is important, you can always be an election inspector. You can be a poll watcher. You can reach out to your political party or activist group to be a poll challenger. Or you can look into your local township and see if they need a local clerk, because I have a feeling there will be a lot of open positions for them soon. And that sucks, because we need good people running our elections. I'm going to make new t-shirts that say hug your local clerk today.
And then could you have it be the dog man hugging a person?
Absolutely.
Hugging you.
Yes.
Hugging the likeness of you.
Yes. New t-shirt.
I'll wear it. Well, another good episode.
I think so.
Enjoy it.
Do it.
Visit us on other platforms and love us, because we're Dungeons and Dopamine Podcast.
And you can listen to us anywhere you stream podcasts and on YouTube.
I put a chip in my mouth.
You sure did.
Because I hate myself and I hate sound quality.
You were like, I said one line. I'm done.
I'm done.
So you can also support us on Patreon at www.com/dungeonsdopamine.
You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Insta, and Reddit.
You can also reach out to us on any of those social medias and also at dungeonsdopamine@yahoo.com.
Dungeons and Dopamine is edited by and published by Argyle Pigeon Productions. That's
Okay,
it.
thanks.
We love you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.